Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 4. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, getting into the groove of training camp, couple practices in a row. Of course, Friday Night Lights tonight's going to be one of the highlights of training camp. So much to talk about today as we recap the last couple days and preview the next couple. So, Dave, how you doing?
Happy Friday. Happy Friday Night Lights Day or night. Exciting day. Football's back. Preseason game last night between the Chargers and the Lions. I watched a pretty good bit of that while working on some other things. It's a great time to be alive, right? With everything going on and starting to get into I guess we're officially halfway through tonight's practice. We'll be officially halfway through the training camp practices as well. And then a week from Saturday, the Steelers' first preseason game, getting geared up for that as well, too. We've got quite a few things to talk about today. And I guess we'll start first with a little bit of housekeeping and recap the health of this team and maybe a transaction possibly or two coming later this evening.
Yeah, let's recap where the team is out health-wise and some roster moves that may be indicative of the team's health. There are several defensive line injuries. That's kind of the headline injury situation for the team right now, not practicing on Thursday, excluding Cam Hayward, who got the day off. Those who were injured and did not practice was defensive lineman Asazi Otomewa, Dean Lowry, and Jacob Slade. Those are more backup rotational players, but still depth is depth, and all three dealing with knee injuries. Otomewa was carted off during Wednesday's practice, getting hurt in 7 shots in that padded live tackling session, and Lowry and Slade were injured at some point later in the practice they finished, but obviously something popped up that prevented them from working on Friday. So the team is reportedly going to sign defensive lineman, let's say Kyle Baugh, to a contract. That's according to CBS Sports. Not been confirmed by the team. The Steelers, though, officially did work out Baugh and a couple other players as well. So they're going to be on the hunt for some defensive line help. And assuming that transaction occurs, a corresponding move will have to come with it. And so we'll see who gets waived or what the corresponding move will be.
Yeah, down that many defensive linemen. I think, as you noted yesterday on Twitter and last night in the recap podcast, that even DeMarvin Leal was getting some work on her defensive line. So they'll have to shore that up. One or two transactions probably going to happen today, and as you stated, we'll see who is moved, possibly waived, injured. To make room for said person or persons. Let's see. We have Isaac Seumalo back off of the NFI list as of Thursday, so there's good news there. He's getting eased back into things. I believe Broderick Jones is still getting eased back into things after some, I guess, reportedly a groin issue that he's working through. So we'll have to wait and see how much those two guys get to work in Friday Night Lights. What else is there to talk about as far as health? A couple other minor things there.
Broderick Jones has returned to individual sessions the last 2 days. He has not worked in team, and Seumalo working in individual periods yesterday. So we'll see if those guys, when they can get back into full participation. But good news for Jones that issue, which reportedly is a groin issue per Mike DeFabo of The Athletic, is not going to be something that will hopefully linger for too long and should get him back in the fold soon enough. But offensive line, a little bit thin there right now with Seumalo and Jones not full. Defensive line thin right now. Baugh being added, by the way, it's Kyler Baugh. I think I said Kyle Baugh earlier. He's a defensive lineman most recently with the Atlanta Falcons. But Pittsburgh trenches a little bit weak right now. Offensive line should get back to full health soon enough. Defensive line reinforcements on the way.
All right, let's see. We have to clean up a couple of the waived injured from a couple of days ago. Jeremiah Moon and Montana Lamonius Craig, both waived injured, both cleared waivers, went to reverted to IR on split salaries. We'll now wait until we'll see what happens over the course of next week to see if one or both of those guys get waived with injury settlements. That's kind of standard course for this time of year. Overall, not the worst situation health wise. Obviously, you hate to hear any injuries that happen, but you look around the NFL for this time of year, and a lot of guys getting waived injured or out until about week one, that sort of thing. So we just got to keep our fingers crossed that they stay in relatively good health, especially when it comes to the more notable names on the roster. But and for getting through Friday Night Lights is one of the toughest things probably when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's only had one padded practice so far, so that's one reason why maybe the injuries have been a little bit on the lighter end, but they had a couple. They had three defensive linemen essentially hurt in that padded practice. Otomewa got hurt during, and Slade and Lowry felt it post-practice. So be in pads tonight, I assume, and probably in pads one, if not both days over the weekend. The team practices Saturday and Sunday before their day off Monday, then back at it Tuesday. So we'll see. Right now in a decent spot, but we know these things ebb and flow and can change in a hurry.
Yeah, and one additional note, as happens every time usually every time during Friday nights lights practices for geez, I don't know how long now. Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller from Sirius XM NFL Radio out there on the campus today, and by the time once the Friday night lights practice gets underway, they start rolling out about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 interviews, everything from Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, Art Rooney, and of course, several of the key players. And we will be passing those along as they come in on the site. So make sure you're on SteelersDepot.com throughout the evening. And then once Alex gets home from the practice, it will be kind of late, but he'll still have his daily camp diary that recaps the practice. So that's something to look forward to Friday night here.
Yeah, the report will be up probably around midnight, if not later. So if you're a night owl, you might catch it. If not, you can read it on Saturday morning. No recap of the podcast tonight. It's going to be way too late. We'll combine everything into Saturday's show, the practice tomorrow and the practice Friday night. Quick note as well, I watched a video from local station KDKA last night. There's going to be some new security measures apparently at the Friday Night Lights practice tonight. That is in response to the shooting that took place in the NFL building a couple days ago. So heightened security, heightened alert there. So just if you're going to Friday Night Lights, you're listening to this, give yourself some time, get there early. Apparently parking is going to be a little more difficult than usual, and parking is always difficult for the Friday Night Lights practice. So just be mindful of that. And a reminder, if you have a ticket, it's digital only. You can't get tickets at the window like you used to in the past. So make sure your ticket's good to go on your phone.
All right, that's good info there. All right, well, let's talk about the NFL headline right now. And I don't think it was an accident that the preseason got underway Thursday night, and about exactly 90 minutes as some of these pregame shows were coming on, that news broke that Terry McLaurin supposedly wants to be traded from the Washington Commanders. Once again, I personally, I look at this, and I've done this long enough now that I start looking at all the timing and the factors involved. I don't think that was an accident that news broke 90 minutes before the first preseason game. He had the complete NFL news cycle essentially to himself at that point. We've seen this happen, with various. When did the T.J. Watt thing happen on the slowest sports day of the year? Talking about his situation.
Myles Garrett, Super Bowl week, how that trade demand started.
Right. And I do personally, I think this is Terry McLaurin taking a page out of the Myles Garrett negotiation tactic book, if you will. I understand look, this thing's gone into training camp now. He's at training camp, but he's not doing anything. This will certainly get their attention. I would still be surprised if the Washington Commanders wind up trading Terry McLaurin. I still think these two sides end up getting a deal done at some point. But obviously, with his name getting thrown out there in the manner that it has and claiming that he would like to be traded, it's perked up the ears of fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers, as you would imagine. But within that, look, I know this is Omar Khan, kind of expect the unexpected as of late when it comes to that. But outside, and this kind of goes back to where I've been on this all along, and even on the heels of them trading for Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and all. The only way I see the Steelers, if indeed the Commanders do wind up trading Terry McLaurin, the only way I see this really happening is if it's a player for player kind of deal and a more expensive player on the Steelers end at that. Remember, McLaurin still. Why does McLaurin want to be traded? He wants to be traded because he wants a new contract. He wants a lucrative deal. He's probably aiming for somewhere around what DK Metcalf got from the Steelers. And I realize he's a little bit older. Some people are saying maybe his market value is about $2 or $3 million less than DK Metcalf. Okay, whatever you want to see, whatever you want, whatever you deem that market value to be, he's still probably going to want to get guaranteed money past this year. When you look at the Steelers and what they've spent so far in cash, could the Steelers get this done from both a cash and a cap perspective? Absolutely, they could. However, it's easier in my mind from a cap perspective than it is a cash perspective, because this team is already at like 285 million roughly on the books as far as cash. Now that does not prevent, there is no limit. They could go up to 385 million. Whatever they, if they got it in the bank, they could definitely spend it there. But I just, the way this thing has been mapped out, and of course going by the last previous 3 years of the CBA and the way the cash spending was, it feels like the Steelers are right at or close to being tapped out with probably what they want to spend in cash. So the way around that, and look, there's always the trade compensation as well too. And this team, it seems to be pretty have their heels dug in pretty good about not touching any of that early round 2026 draft capital, if you will. So in my eyes, the only way that the Steelers would get a deal done for Terry McLaurin would be to trade somebody like let's say Alex Highsmith for a Terry McLaurin, and then getting a new deal done for him. And is a 1-for-1 player enough to get that done? I would imagine you'd probably have to send someone, I don't know, like a Roman Wilson or something along those lines along with it, to A, help with the trade compensation, and B, to help ease up some of the cash spending, because you would have to turn around and probably give a guy like Terry McLaurin somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 million in cash in 2025. Look, I get it. I get the Madden part of this. I get being a fan of Terry McLaurin part of this. I'm a huge fan of Terry McLaurin and have been for numerous years. It's just that the math and the algebra and the geometry and the trigonometry and the calculus, all of it's just not adding up here for him to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
So what should Pittsburgh's posture be here in the McLaurin situation? Should Omar Khan pick up the phone? Should he wait it out? Should he just let it go and not pursue it at all? If you're Omar Khan, what do you do?
I mean, you always make the call, right? I mean, those are free last time I checked. And I would imagine they don't have his number blocked over there in Washington, maybe the way Chicago does. But yeah, you always look into it. And if if you're going into this offseason, your plans was to spend about 285 million, and you feel like to make this team even better, you would have to spend an additional 30 million. Well, you need to have those meetings ahead of time and be light on your feet, be able to to go make a move like that. But I mean, you always look into that kind of stuff. But I just I just don't see this happening for all the reasons that I gave.
But you used the phrase, and it was the one I was gonna throw at you, was Mike Tomlin's saying is have a plan, but be light on your feet. And the McLaurin situation can be a moment of being light on your feet and saying, listen, look at what Pittsburgh has done this year. They've been aggressive. I don't want to call it all in because I think that's inaccurate because they have a lot of cap space for next year. They got a bunch of draft picks for next year. If you were to add McLaurin, maybe that would be a little more closer to all in, depending on the parameters of a trade. But you add DK Metcalf, you add Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, you sign Aaron Rodgers. You're making the push for now. You're trying to radically change this team to get some radically different results. You're out of this 9-10 win, one and done purgatory Pittsburgh has been stuck in for 4 straight seasons. Why not go after McLaurin? You're not going to pay a quarterback big money now or in the future in all likelihood. Yes, there's a cash consideration for sure, but you know that you can probably justify spending big money on 2 receivers because you're not going to be spending it on quarterback. And you got the TJ Watt contract done. And so that is now done, and you can map out your cash and cap situation. Had the Watt deal not been done yet, maybe you would be a little more hesitant because you want to see exactly where the Watt situation goes. But how does Pittsburgh sit there and say, we want to be aggressive, we need change? Omar Khan talked about they need a lot of change, and then you not pursue Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, look, and from a cash perspective, this is only year 2 of the 3-year cycle, so you could adjust next year's and spend even less because if you get around 105 or 106% of the cash versus cap this year, that can be adjusted out. You spend a little less. There, as we've already talked about, there's not a lot of guys probably going to be on the list to extend next offseason, and a lot of that depends on how those guys play in 2025. Guys like Joey Porter Jr. and guys like Keanu Benton. But light on your feet too. I mean, this is a little bit different than just moving up a practice.
I know, but it's the principle of a plan, but plans can change depending on the
Sure.
demands of the situation.
Look, I mean, once again, you make the call, and do you have to be light on your feet when it comes? Look, why if the Commanders are going to trade him, they're going to want 2026 draft capital, right?
Sure, and that's the question. Should Omar Khan be so dead set on not trading that draft capital? Is that the right play or not?
Well, once again, you're getting into longer range views of versus of this team versus thinking you can go more all in this offseason. So, I think, I mean, it goes with any aspect of business or in life. You got to be able to change on the fly, and have a backup plan should something irresistible present itself. But within that, I do think that if they did go after McLaurin, they would have to probably seriously consider trading a guy like Alex Highsmith and
But why would
probably
they have to do that?
uh just to help alleviate from maybe the cash aspect. I
But
mean,
what
once
is
again,
the issue with the cash aspect that would prevent that and really dictate giving
just
up a piece like
just
Highsmith?
because I think once again, being light on your feet and then spending an extra $30 million in cash, there's a happy medium within there somewhere.
I get that, but what is the issue of spending more in cash? Obviously, you have to have the cash on hand. So is that the
Right.
issue? Is it just what is the issue of this team being more aggressive in cash spending?
Well, I don't know as far as where they sit from a actual being able to have the cash in escrow and all like that. But I mean, that's look, the financial side of it is a very important side of it, and
Sure.
being able to, the whole economics of it and profitability and whether or not you have that cash that you can tie up in escrow. So that's a side of it that I just can't answer because I don't see the bank statements and all like that. But it's more than just like I said, being flexible is one thing when you're talking about moving up practice, but when you're talking about going into a season and saying and we heard Samir talk about this and all too. These teams usually have this thing mapped out pretty stringent as far as what they want to spend in cash.
Without getting into the weeds too in depth, what would a contract extension look like for McLaurin? I had in my head last night 3 years, I don't know, $95 million. I think maybe he would want a little bit more than that, but if Washington's not going to give him anything and this is the deal that he could take, and he would get, what, more than Metcalf on an average yearly value basis, does that sound about right to you and guarantee the first 2 years of that deal?
He would look, and I've said from the get-go since the Metcalf deal, he's probably angling something like that. And I can let me go to what my buddy Daniel Salib just put out on Twitter way back on March 28th. He has a McLaurin contract projection, 3 years, 93 million, 31 APY with 70 million in total guarantees, including old money. He just keeps up with the cap inflation from his last deal. This makes him the 6th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL as he approaches 30. The DK deal slightly bumped him up. So this was not long after the DK Metcalf deal that Daniel put this out there. And at McLaurin's age, I mean, that sounds about right. 3 years, 93 million, 31 APY, which would be slightly higher than I think DK's, right? And with 70 million in total guarantees would essentially be the first 2 years fully guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how the Metcalf contract gets evaluated. Over the cap has his average yearly value at $33 million. I think it's debate about, is it a 4-year, $132 million deal, 5 years, 150, that whole kind of song and dance, new money, old money type stuff.
Well,
But
his on over the cap is the new money average. So, well, I think the way he's looking at it is the cash flow overall. But I mean, he has 3 years, 93. That would probably be the low side if the APY was 31, because it would be slightly technically lower than that as far as the new money, assuming that is new money average that Daniel's writing here at 31 APY. So, but I mean, that's definitely the ballpark that you're looking
mhm.
at.
Right. Okay. So my guesstimate, which I didn't even know those numbers of 3 years, 95, sounds about right overall. Now he is 30 and his game is predicated largely on speed. And so there's concerns about what he'll be in a couple of years from now, but still a really talented player. 1,000-yard season last year, 13 touchdowns, really good in the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, your part of your heart says, go make this move, continue to be aggressive. Part of you wonders, how much is too much? Can this offense support that? The Metcalf deal is certainly more attractive than the McLaurin deal because Metcalf is younger, more in the prime of his career. I think just a more physical freak than McLaurin is. If you're Omar Khan, put on your hat, put the team likelihood aside, are you aggressively pursuing this deal?
Look, I'm a huge Terry McLaurin fan. I would love to see him in black and gold. I put that out on Twitter again yesterday as well too. This team does not have a quarterback of the future right now. You do have a guy that you can win with this year in Rodgers. You've done what you've done on the defensive side of football. You've gone out and brought in a guy like Johnny Smith as well too. If you really think that this team is in that close right now, and that a piece like Terry McLaurin could be enough to get you over the top, then you have to try to go win it all now, right? And so yeah, I mean, I would have no problem if the news broke in 5 minutes that the Steelers traded a second round draft pick for Terry McLaurin for 2026, and let's say a Roman Wilson for Terry McLaurin. They turned around and gave him a 3-year, $93 million contract. I would have no issue with that at all, because I think that would be the final piece of saying, yeah, we are all in on this.
That's exactly what I was basically going to propose to you. I was going to present a scenario in which Pittsburgh trades a 2026 third-round pick in Roman Wilson for Terry McLaurin and give him that deal that Daniel just laid out, 3 years, $93 million. Would you do that if you're Omar Khan?
Yeah, I think Terry's a very clean player. Yeah, he's coming off the injury. Yeah, he's 30, but can you can you get at least another 2 years out of Terry? Yeah, I think so. And then you're setting up the thing too. Let's say this thing goes well for Aaron Rodgers. I know there's still going to be a lot of speculation. Is he done or not? But would something like that entice Aaron Rodgers to come back for maybe one more season if you had a nice run, with this team this year? So, I mean, look, this team looks a lot better on paper than it did back in February, right? A lot better. And if you believe that, and look, if you had Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf under contract for the next couple of years, you definitely would not have to address that position in the draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least not early. So you're saying, okay, well, that second round pick, I guess the thing is, hey, and look, there's still ways of trading up in the 2026 draft and going after said player, said quarterback, and all like that. Look, from a plausibility standpoint, could you get this done? Absolutely, you could. From especially if you're willing to be flexible in the cash perspective end of it.
What is the line? Because to answer my own question, would I trade a next year's third and Roman Wilson and give McLaurin that contract? I would. I would do it. I'd feel comfortable about it. It's not a one-year play. I think you're going to get this guy, like you said, for at least 2 seasons. And even if Rodgers does not come back and you draft a rookie, now that rookie's thrown to McLaurin and DK Metcalf and those tight ends with hopefully a better offensive line and a solid run game, that's a good environment for a rookie quarterback or any quarterback to be in. So I would do that. The question is, what is the line? Would you give up a second-round pick and Roman and give that contract to McLaurin? Would you do that, Dave?
I mean, ideally, I'd like your scenario better because this is a third rounder
yeah.
instead of a second rounder. But if that's what it took, then okay, I think I'd be fine with it.
A second's a little harder to sell for me. It's the same you gave up for Metcalf and McLaurin.
But you're talking about, is a second worth winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, that's another question. Okay, let's assume they get McLaurin, whatever the details are, without trading any major player. It's just picks, and that's the context of the deal. You add McLaurin into the fold. Does Pittsburgh become a Super Bowl contender off the rip?
I think they do.
Do you think McLaurin's that one additional piece that gets him over the hump?
I think it could be.
It gets him a lot closer, obviously, but
I think it gets him in. I think it gets him into the consideration. Look, anything.
But does it get him into tier one? Does it get him in? Because contention to me is your Buffaloes, your Baltimores, your Kansas Cities. That's tier one. Is Pittsburgh in that group if you add McLaurin?
They're probably tier 1B.
No, I think they're tier 2. I don't think it gets them there. And that begs the question, okay, if it doesn't get you into tier 1, what is the worth of doing that deal? But you get in the playoffs, you win a game, you're in the divisional round, one of the final couple teams, you never know what could happen. I think that's the approach there. So ultimately, to wrap it up, I'm with you. I think McLaurin stays in Washington. I think he wants to put some pressure on the team. He wants to exert some leverage. He held out. Then he reported to training camp. He lost that quote-unquote leverage, which he really didn't have much of even by holding out. Now he's trying to exert it in a different type of way and probably isn't happy with the lack of conversations, lack of progress since he showed some good faith in reporting to training camp a couple days ago. So I think he will ultimately re-sign in Washington. I don't know why Washington would want to trade away a valuable asset as they themselves are Super Bowl contenders and one of the favorites in the NFC right now. I don't want this to become Brandon Ayuk 2.0. We talk all summer about this thing every which way, and every talking head discusses it as well, only for McLaurin to go re-sign in September 2nd. But to kind of say my piece, I think Pittsburgh has to pursue it, has to look at it. I think Omar Khan has to be a little less rigid in his stance of not trading next year's capital, if that's what it takes to get it done. I would prefer that over trading an Alex Highsmith or a player. But ultimately, I think McLaurin will remain in Washington.
I think this even goes the biggest obstacle here of this whole thing, and people don't like to hear it because they think and look, the owners make a lot of money and all. The biggest obstacle is whether or not you want to spend, if you have or can spend the cash this year. So that goes to Art Rooney. If Art Rooney the second, if you go to him and say, look, we really want McLaurin, we think we can compete for a Super Bowl and be a Super Bowl caliber team this year if we get him, but we need to bump up our spending from what we projected it to be. Yes or no? And so I think this this comes down to Art Rooney's second decision more so than anything else, because I think the biggest obstacle within this is the cash spending for 2025.
Dave, all we need is the biggest bake sale of all time to
Uh,
save the town and bring Terry McLaurin into Pittsburgh. So
oh
let's get
yeah,
started.
and yeah, I don't think Yinzers would I think the Yinzers would be up for that. There'd be bake sales all over the course of the next 5 weeks to raise however much they need. People be selling their cars and and everything. Look, I get it. I nobody gets it more than me. And like I said, if this was probably anybody other than Terry McLaurin, I'd have a different viewpoint of it. But I do think that the biggest obstacle is the cash spending aspect of it. It's not the cap. You can make the cap work. You can make the player work in the system. You can make whatever the trade compensation work. And there's not a lot of times that you say that this late in the offseason, especially when it comes to the Steelers. So if I think this is an Art Rooney thing. If you could hammer out a deal that you think's fair, and a contract that you think's fair, that satisfies both sides, and it goes to Art, what's in the checking account?
Sure, and I don't want to be flippant about the cash aspect when I kind of push back on that. I was just trying to get a better understanding of maybe what makes the cash an obstacle, and I think it probably, frankly, is just having the money on hand, the escrow, and just the cash flow of it all, especially without the season fully starting and your revenue not being probably as high as it will be over the next couple of months, and a lot of that money, that signing bonus, for example, what would be a signing bonus on a McLaurin contract? 30 million?
I
What's the
mean,
number on that?
you're talking about the cash being about what DK's was, which was about what 35 million. So you're talking about around a $30 million signing bonus, I would think.
Right, which you basically have to have at the ready. Now, I know that teams will pay out signing bonuses in installments sometimes, and it's not always you get a $30 million check upon signing, but I'm getting to myself too much into the weeds here. We'll see. I think you have to consider it, pursue it. I think it's unlikely to occur. Omar Khan, never one to really play his cards, obviously openly, but seemed to downplay the idea on the Pat McAfee show a couple days ago, saying he likes the roster. Of course, he said he's liked the roster before and big moves have happened, so take that with a grain of salt. But I think McLaurin stays. We'll watch it, and I just pray it does not become IU 2.0.
Look, we talk. People just view these owners and look, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry and business and all like that. But some teams have more flexibility in the cash department than others do.
And Pittsburgh is probably not one of the more cash-rich teams in the NFL.
Right. That's what I get from all the studies and all that I do on all this. But once again, I mean, could they probably make it happen? Yeah, I mean, they probably could. But it's easy for us to spend somebody else's money like that.
Sure.
Not ever being part of an organization and all like that. But I do think, push comes to shove, the biggest obstacle in all of this is just getting the go ahead to spend, 30 million more than what you were going to plan to spend in cash. And I know people say, well, that's not a lot of money, but for some organizations it is.
If you're going to try to convince Art Rooney of it, I would just show him tapes of the last 6 playoff losses, because this is why Pittsburgh has made all the changes it has to get over this hump, to get the stink off this playoff drought, not winning a playoff game since 2016. You guys know the song and dance there, and if McLaurin helps you get over that hump, you're going to feel really good about it in January. You don't want to sit there in January and say, man, one piece away, if we could have made this move, what could have been? I think Pittsburgh has been in that place the last couple of years. I think they've tried to get away from that this year. Could McLaurin be that last piece to get over that hump? And obviously, you're not doing this to just win the wild card round. You want to go further than that. But that is the elephant in the room right now. This team's one and done nature, which is not to the standard of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right. And look, I think all this talk's going to end up being for naught. But I mean, that's why they have talk shows and podcasts, right?
That's why we're talking heads, Dave, you and I. All right, let's go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers here. A lot of players talking to themselves over the last couple days. Heard from Aaron Rodgers. The Pat McAfee show was on hand Wednesday and had a lot of people on. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, Omar Khan, etc. Danny Smith, who could forget Danny Smith? That was a great interview. Any notable comments I did want to talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers' comments on Zach Frazier, really giving him his props for his intelligence and helping him out. Rodgers himself admitting he's not yet an expert and has not mastered the offense. Not a big surprise considering how still kind of new he is to it all, being signed over in June. What is your takeaway on Rodgers admitting that he is not fully there, grasping the offense, and his comments on Zach Frazier helping him out?
Well, let me start first and foremost. My main takeaway, once again, from Rodgers and on McAfee was the whole courtship and bromance that happened between Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers. I feel like Aaron Rodgers felt like he was treated more like a human being and an individual and a friend throughout this process, and not pressured into it. And I think I think the way Mike Tomlin treated him played a big part in him making the decision to sign for the Steelers and sign for the Steelers for the amount that he did. So it was good to hear. I think Aaron Rodgers is all bought in on Mike Tomlin, and I liked his demeanor throughout that whole interview. He don't give a what about people and what he said. People were saying about him being washed or whatnot, and he doesn't get. I think it was good to have the curtain peeled back a little bit more with how all that went down and how Mike Tomlin treated him throughout the courtship process, if you will. So that was my number one takeaway. Second, and it was kind of combined between the Pat McAfee and the media interview, either before or after practice. I think it was before practice that day. Was the comments on Zach Frazier, and I think he views Zach Frazier as a very smart individual. He referenced how Zach's making a lot of line calls early as Aaron gets kind of caught up with the offense and all. And then the flip side, he don't need to be so smug, he says, because these are going to be my calls once we get more acclimated with it. But I mean, the fact of the matter is he is impressed with Zach Frazier and how smart he is, and that if this team, for whatever reason, gets in a situation where Zach Frazier needs to make more of the calls because of whatever situation at quarterback, he can do it. So I think that was good to hear. And about him not being totally up on the offense yet, I think that's to kind of be expected here. This is a guy that was not there for the OTAs, and while he was there for mandatory mini camp, he himself said he was more of a spectator more than anything. So really, this is a guy that essentially just arrived with this team day one of training camp, and he's having to get on a moving train. And I would imagine he doesn't have everything down to this point, but we still have 5 weeks to go, roughly, until the season starts. That's a lot of time. Got a couple more weeks or another week and a half or so, I guess, of training camp to go, and that's what this time of season is for there. So I'm not alarmed or anything, especially when we're talking about a guy like Aaron Rodgers that has played as many years as in the NFL as he has. He'll get caught up. I don't have any qualms about that. Now you can't have him go down and miss any time during training camp, I don't think, and he obviously is going to have his days off and all like that to be worked in. I do kind of wonder maybe what this does for preseason games. Are you going to at least want to get one series out of him in the first preseason game? Maybe whatever you deem as a ramp up game, 3 series or whatnot out of him. Maybe this changes a little bit how you treat the preseason just to get him out there and get him comfortable and all. But look, nothing that Aaron Rodgers has said, none of what the players have said has me alarmed right now with Aaron Rodgers catching up with the offense.
And by the way, when Rodgers made the comment about Frazier being so smug, his tongue was firmly planted in his cheek in that comment. That was in all respect to Zach Frazier. Just for clarification for those who didn't get to watch the interview. 2 quick sidebars, Dave. The UFL announcing that Kyler Baugh is going to sign with an NFL team. That's on their transaction sheet, so that'll lend credibility to the report that Kyler Baugh is going to come to Pittsburgh after working out with the team. And Not super related to Pittsburgh. This was from Diana Rossini a couple minutes ago before 11 a.m. as we are recording this. She says Micah Parsons and the Cowboys' relationship has, quote, deteriorated to the point where Parsons is considering, quote, drastic measures, which could include a trade request or even a declaration that he is severing his relationship with the team per multiple league sources familiar with the situation, end quote. So things getting pretty squirrely over there in Dallas.
I think he's Xeroxed the Terry McLaurin plan. You know?
Maybe so. But Micah Parsons will not be coming to Pittsburgh. That is one discussion we will not have to have.
Well, why not? You're going all in. I mean, if you got the money, you can make it work from a cap perspective, Alex. And let's say you trade Alex Highsmith to the Cowboys and a draft pick or whatnot. I mean, why not look at if you're going to take the stand that you took with Terry McLaurin? I get it, and I but I mean, why wouldn't you consider that?
Well, first of all, we're going to need a lot of bake sales. We need a lot of cookies if we're going to get this deal done because the Micah Parsons contract is going to be even larger than the Terry McLaurin contract.
I'm just trying to throw it back.
No, I know. You're asking me a little bit. I get it. No, I understand. I'm just trying to make the point of, being light on your feet. And
this is a guy, too, that said he'd like to play for Mike Tomlin.
Sure. No, I understand that. I get that overall. But look, my proposal was not to trade Alex Highsmith for Terry McLaurin. I wanted to trade the draft picks. And if you're trading for Micah Parsons, it's going to take an incredible haul, which really would probably take you out of the running for a quarterback next year.
All right.
That'd be my legitimate response to why Micah Parsons wouldn't be realistic. But I know you're just giving me a hard time for my comments earlier. So all good there. With Rodgers, and you're right, Rodgers talked about this was a friendship between himself and Mike Tomlin. It wasn't a recruiting of come play for us and just focused on the football side of thing. Rodgers talked about Tomlin caring and knowing about Rodgers' personal life and the inner workings of that and keeping up with that. Hearing all of that, do you feel better about how Pittsburgh approached the Aaron Rodgers situation, the 3-month wait, which came with a lot of angst and concern and worry and frustration, at least from my end? Do you feel better about how Pittsburgh handled that now hearing Rodgers' side of it all?
Absolutely, I do. And I'll tell you a great article this morning from Michael Silver on The Athletic, talking, and apparently he's had, and it's probably not surprising because those two guys are Bay Area guys. I think Michael Silver's always been able to, when he needs an interview with Aaron Rodgers, have to have a sit down and all like that. And Rodgers evidently told Michael Silver, I was very honest with him, meaning Mike Tomlin, about what was going on in my personal life. Whether he wrote it down, I don't give a shit. Can you say that? The fact that he would remember important things that were going on in my life was really meaningful to me. I felt like I was talking to a friend, not a coach, because it wasn't talking X's and O's. It was, how's this person? How is that person doing? And that really meant a lot to me. And it was at the forefront of my mind when I made this decision to play.
I feel better about the saga too. Now, I didn't have as much initial angst as others. I was okay
I
waiting.
didn't either.
Yeah, I was okay waiting through the draft. I was getting angsty around the start of OTAs. I think Rodgers still signed basically at the deadline. I think had he not made a decision before mandatory minicamp and the team went away for the long 6-week summer break before training camp, that really would have been to a large degree untenable to put the team and the players in that uncertain situation. So I still think Pittsburgh signed it at the last quote unquote acceptable time to do it. But yeah, I do understand Pittsburgh's perspective. And that is I'll say it again, for all of Mike Tomlin's warts, he has that ability to understand players, to connect with players. He loves the phrase, gives players what they need. And I think he gave Aaron Rodgers exactly what he needed in this situation, which was time and grace and patience and understanding and compassion and sympathy or empathy. And that all led Rodgers to signing with Pittsburgh on a really cheap contract.
There's a key word in this next quote from Rodgers, according to Michael Silver. We didn't have a friendship from day one. but there was a respect level that was definitely mutual that I felt from the first conversation on. He talked about it the other day in a meeting. Listening is a skill. I was sorting through a lot of stuff in my personal life. I didn't need to be recruited, but I appreciated the way that he talked to me and the respect that he had for me that came out every time we talked. And I think he's a big part of this whole thing. Aaron Rodgers just used the word respect twice in that quote.
And knowing Aaron Rodgers, that means the world to him. That means more than probably any dollar amount you could have given that guy in his current situation, because he's financially obviously well off. When he's talked about money was not the issue. The respect, especially coming off the Jet saga, which was 2 difficult years there. And then obviously he was very upset about him getting cut the way he got cut by the Jets. So he flies out from California to New York. He's expecting a multi-hour meeting to talk to the new regime of Aaron Glenn and company about the plan and the future. And instead, he gets a 15-minute, hey, how do you want us to announce we're cutting you? And that was the extent of it. And he was obviously felt very slighted, right or wrong. That's how he felt about it. So he was coming off all that situation. And he goes to Mike Tomlin, who has a completely different approach to it. Understandably, because he's trying to sign the guy, obviously, instead of cutting him. But point is, Rodgers felt the love in Pittsburgh he didn't feel from New York, and that probably was the biggest reason why he signed with Pittsburgh.
Look, I think he's all in. I think the comments from his teammates, even though you expect praise, it feels like he's connecting well with teammates. I think he's all in. I think Mike Tomlin is all in on him, and obviously how he plays is going to mean more than anything here moving forward. But I don't want to say that my opinion of Aaron Rodgers has changed. I think Aaron Rodgers is cocky and smug in some of these interviews, and there's going to, as we've said several times, there's going to be things that he says throughout the season, whether it be on McAfee or in press conferences or whatnot, that's going to be a little divisive, I imagine, or cause a little bit of controversy, but. I have no qualms with how Aaron Rodgers has handled himself so far.
No, I haven't either. I think he's done everything perfectly, from also taking the high road, which he's not always known for, but taking the high road on the Terry Bradshaw
I
answer,
thought that
which
was
I
great.
thought that was like a moment where it's like, okay, this is all great, and it's really encouraging to hear that. Now, if the team loses and they start 1-3, then none of this matters. It's all just fodder and meaningless, obviously. But that was huge. I mean, to be the millionth in one person to psychoanalyze Aaron Rodgers from afar, which I don't spend a lot of time doing. My view of him is my view of a lot of kind of the alpha personalities, the McAfees of the world. They're truly ride or die people. If you're in their good graces and you're friends with them, they will go to hell and back for you. And you see that with Mike Tomlin, defending Tomlin vigorously, excuse me. It's all BS, the narrative against him. This is a great coach, a great man. But if you are not on his side, if you're on his bad side, then you are going to get every barb thrown your way. Every criticism is an attack, and I must defend myself. And that's the standpoint of guys like Rodgers and McAfee. I think they are true ride or die, all in or all out type of people. But Rodgers is now in Pittsburgh. He is all in, and I think he will be a great teammate and ride or die for this team.
Sort of like mine and your relationship, and then our relationship with the staff, right? I mean, we are right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're certainly like all in people in that. I don't think you or I are. I think Rodgers and McAfee. The downside is they can be very vindictive when you're not on their side, and I don't think I'm like that. I don't think you're like that. So I think that's kind of a difference there. But I think obviously, yeah, all in. That's kind of our approach to taking care of the team.
All right. What else about Aaron?
I think with the Zach Frazier comments were interesting, and it's gonna be really, really important. Obviously your center is always important for your quarterback there, especially a new quarterback for the team learning this offense. But Zach Frazier's gonna have a really big role in helping, in a sense, acclimate Aaron Rodgers to taking some stuff off his plate as he's learning the offense and getting familiar with the team and the structure and scheme of Arthur Smith's offense. And I'll make this point. I've made it before, and I'll make it several more times, Dave. But the first month of the season, such a big test for this offense and this offensive line, not just from the teams you're facing, which may not be the powerhouse teams of the NFL, but the defensive-minded coaching staffs you're facing. You're facing, in week 1, the Jets with Aaron Glenn, and they got some good pass rushers, and starting with Will McDonald. You're facing, Mike McDonald in week 2, defensive-minded guy from Baltimore, those aggressive looks. You're facing New England, week 3 in Mike Vrabel, a defensive-minded guy, obviously. You're facing week 4, Minnesota, Brian Flores, defensive-minded guy. You're going to see a lot of chaos, a lot of different looks, exotic fronts, sim pressures, the kitchen sink thrown at you, and a guy like Frazier has to help Rodgers sort all that out. I thought Chris Sims had a really good point when they were discussing those comments, him and Florio on PFT, of sometimes Rodgers is going to be looking at the safeties or making a check or looking at the receiver, giving a signal, and the front's going to move late. And Frazier's going to have to be the guy that has to work out that call. And so it's really good for Frazier to be making those calls now, taking ownership, not feeling like he has to shrink and give Rodgers a deference and let him do everything. And that's really big for Frazier in his second year, too, to feel like he can be calling this offense and telling Rodgers what to do. That's impressive. So that relationship's going to be really, really important throughout training camp as things grow and as they both get acclimated to each other. But I think that first month of the season against those really defensive-minded teams, Frazier's going to play a really important role.
And would you rather have a rookie center do that, or would you rather have a second-year guy that's already played 14, 15, 16 games, whatever it is that Frazier has had?
What a world of difference to be in that second year. Because if this was a rookie Frazier, I mean, he played well as a rookie, obviously, but in terms of making those calls and, having to have that ownership and leadership, it's a big change, I'm sure.
Right.
All right, Dave, what else, some other players or anything else from Rodgers that stuck out to you?
One quick stat that I pulled for his NFL career to date. Aaron Rodgers is 71-7. That's a 9-10 win percentage in regular season games in which he attempted 20 to 39 passes in, and he did not throw an interception, and he was sacked 2 or fewer times. All right. I know that's kind of cherry picking, but I mean, that's kind of optimal. Aaron Rodgers, 20 to 39 passes attempted. Do not throw an interception. And Aaron's got a really good interception to attempt ratio over his career. And how many times, we've talked about how the sacks have got to be held down, and was sacked 2 or fewer times in a game. 71-7. That's pretty solid. He was 4-1 last season with the Jets when attempting 20 to 39 passes, was not intercepted, and was sacked 2 or fewer times. So that's your sweet spot right there for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's all about avoiding negativity, and that's true. That's how the Steelers have had their offensive model for a long time, was just don't make the mistake, let the defense win. Now, Rodgers will be asked to do more and put this offense in positions to carry their weight and do more than just not literally lose the game with mistakes and turnovers and all that negativity, like I said. But sure, Rodgers has been historically great at taking care of the football, the lowest interception rate in NFL history. And so that's why I don't care about him throwing a pick to Patrick Queen on the first play of training camp, because I know he's not going to throw a bunch of picks in the regular season. So the idea of Rodgers was you get to keep the Steelers model of let's play clean, let's not turn the football over, let's not put ourselves in bad situations, because we really like our defense and believe our defense can keep the scores down and win a lot of games. But hopefully Rodgers is going to elevate the quarterback play and be able to put points on the board the way quarterbacks in seasons past have not been able to. I know that we said the same thing last year and it didn't quite work out that way, but I get the point about trying it again with Rodgers, who I think is clearly the best pure passer in quarterback Pittsburgh has had since Ben, and probably even before the last couple of years of Ben. Probably the 2018 Ben is the last time Pittsburgh had better quarterback play than what they'll hopefully get in 2025 with Aaron Rodgers.
Let me take that stat a little bit further for you. I just said 71-7 in regular season games in which he attempted 20 to 39 passes in and did not throw an interception and was sacked 2 or fewer times. In 4 of those 7 losses there, Rodgers fumbled 1 or more times. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's you talk about negativity. All right. So Aaron Rodgers for his career is 55-3, 948 win percentage in games that he did not fumble in which he also attempted 20 to 39 passes and did not throw an interception and was sacked 2 or fewer times.
It's a great stat, Dave. And That's why I pay the big bucks over there for that information.
I did not look this up. Search that same. You can probably hammer this out of StatHead quicker than I can. Okay, search Russell Wilson. With the same criteria. So you have to go by game.
So this is just to spit it back to me: 20 to 39 pass attempts, no turnovers, essentially.
No fumbles, no interceptions, and sacked 2 or fewer times.
Okay, 2 or fewer times. Okay, it's for his career.
Right.
Okay, what do you think? If you had to guess what that win percentage is, as I start putting the numbers in, what do you think it would be? It's gonna be high.
It was just like a squirrel just going right through my head to research this. Not 9-10.
9-10, and Rodgers was 9-48. I mean, obviously, teams are gonna have high win percentages in those situations, but the relativity, I was gonna think about what's the NFL win percentage in those situations, but we can look at Russell Wilson sacked 2 or fewer times for his career. Let me put all that in. Hopefully I have all the data in correctly. You say 9-10, that sounds reasonable to me. I'm looking at Russell Wilson. He has won 34 such games. He has lost 8. He has a 34-8 record. Let me try to put up a winning percentage calculator real quick to get the exact math on that. 34-8 and 0 ties gets you to 0.8095. So
right. Lower.
810, so lower, a little bit, 81%, you could say.
So and that's regular season, right?
Yeah, just regular season.
All right. So how many games in total has Russell Wilson, and Russell's played a long time too, right? Obviously not as long, but how many total games was that?
That is 42 total games out of the 199 he started in his career.
That he has attempted 20 to 39 passes in, not thrown an interception, not fumbled, and was sacked 2 or fewer times.
Correct.
All right. What was Ben? Do Ben real quick.
All right. Let me. I'm available for kids' parties too if you need me on this stat. Let me look up Ben's. What do you guess Ben's is?
Maybe Ben's 9-10.
Okay, we could just keep doing 9-10. You're just the guy that plays the same lotto numbers each night, and until you hit Ben. Oh, it's not 9-10, Dave. Ben, in that circumstance, he won 35 games. He lost 1.
Wow.
So he's 35-1, and the win percentage on that is going to be 97.2%. So 0.972, even better than Rodgers.
Wow, how's that for a stat?
Want to guess his lone loss of those 36 games?
Had to be a New England game.
You would think. Not New England, though. It's on the other spectrum.
Baltimore?
No, I'll give you the answer. 2018 at the Raiders, 24-21, one of those many upset losses to those terrible Raiders teams over the 2010s.
Did he leave that game injured or no? Was that one he left injured or no? Was that the rib one?
Josh Dobbs came in. He threw a pick. I can't remember that game.
That was the rib game. Was that it?
That was the rib game?
Yeah, wasn't that that was on the road, right? That was the rib game, right?
Yeah, now Ben came back in that game, but Dobbs did relieve him in the third quarter.
All right. Give me that again. And you sure you got the criteria? 20 to 39 pass attempts, no interceptions, no fumbles, sacked 2 or fewer times. And what was his record in regular season?
I have it correct, in 35-1 in the regular season.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff there from Ben. So
is there any takeaway there other than the obvious? I mean,
it's hard just because obviously in those circumstances, teams are going to win. I think it'd be useful to have the NFL average to see how much higher Rodgers is compared to what the NFL would otherwise offer. But if Rodgers can do that, then the Steelers are going to win a lot of games, obviously.
I mean, I think you hit on the key point there is just limiting the negativity. And Mike Tomlin's all about that, right?
But this offense has to do more because they've limited negativity for, they did it in 2019. They did it in 2021, 2022, 2023. I mean, they were able to limit the turnovers, the giveaways. But that is a model to win the regular season, which Pittsburgh has shown they can do pretty consistently, even with rosters that don't deserve to win 9 or 10 games overall. but getting in the playoffs, you got to do more than just get by and not lose the game offensively. That's the issue, and that's why Pittsburgh has made these more aggressive moves, and one reason why they signed Aaron Rodgers.
All right. That was fun.
All right, good conversation there. I'm not sure where to go from here, Dave, to be honest with you. What else do we have? Any other players speaking? Anyone defensively? I mean, I've listened to some of these comments and quotes from various players. Nothing's really stuck out to me in a big way, but you tell me.
First, let's just camp overview so far and 2025 Steelers overview with as they head into Friday Night Lights. You go first, and then I'll give you my overarching thought, what I thought about this morning.
Sure, from couple practices in, what are they at? 6 practices in, the defense has won overall. They've won, I would say, every day but one. That was yesterday, where the offense had its first day, where I think it bettered the defense. You've seen the Rodgers connection with Metcalf heat up a little bit. I know these things are going to ebb and flow. You don't want to read too much into one day or even just 1 week of training camp, especially with just the one padded practice so far. I think the rookie class is overall impressed, albeit very early, but from Harmon to Will Howard to Caleb Johnson to even 7th rounder Dante Kent, I think the group has looked good. They've been, knock on wood, relatively healthy overall. I know those things are subject to change, but the defense has flown around. The DBs have been really aggressive. The cornerback room looks deep, and it's not just the top 3, but also Brandon Echols and Corey Trice, and those guys have made plays, so the defense looks legit. The offense is hopefully taking some steps. The rookie class looks good. Decent health overall. Offensive line, Broderick Jones, still feeling pretty uncertain about that. Those are my takeaways.
All right. Mine is the word multiplicity. That's my takeaway.
It's a $10 word there. Where does that come from? Can you explain?
Just boy, you look at the defense, you look at the offense, you look at the weapons that they have and how we expect them to use them, especially when 2 and 3 tight ends are used in this offense. You've got guys that can get dirty and have reduced splits in Robert Woods and Roman Wilson. You got a feisty player who can stretch the field in both obviously DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin III. You look at the history of Arthur Smith, and especially going back to his Tennessee days. You look at what you reported about Jonnu Smith getting that toss, a couple of tosses in training camp practice just the other day. The multiplicity on offense, I think, is something that's going to be fun to watch. And this is even more so than last year because Michael Pruitt and some of the other answers that they had most of the season weren't necessarily there last year. You got obviously a veteran quarterback that should be able to handle all that, and Aaron Rodgers, and that's the offense. Defense, we've talked about it several times of what Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr., the linebackers, this team's going to appears to be wanting to have a lot of multiplicity as far as defense goes this year. More so, obviously, than probably several years going back now. So I think the buzz phrase when it comes to this 2025 team, my take at this point of training camp is multiplicity.
I think you're right. I think this defense has been extremely versatile. The offense has shown shades of the same, especially with Jonnu Smith getting, backfield carries, which I know is not new. He's done it before. You have the clip of him in Tennessee. He was telling reporters, go watch that clip basically yesterday. So it's not brand new, but interesting all the same at 30 years old. Yeah, the goal of the offseason was to become more versatile. Omar Khan explicitly said it at some point, I think during that day of training camp, arrival date, press conference. He said, you guys know I love versatility. I love guys who can do multiple things, and they've done that with DK Metcalf, what he can add as a receiver at all 3 levels, as a run blocker as well. Jonnu Smith, his versatility, obviously. Defensively with Jalen Ramsey, that is obvious enough. So, yeah, I think that's been Pittsburgh's goal. I think they've accomplished that.
I've gotten a lot more excited about this team over the course of the last, whenever the trade for Minka went down.
Is that typical, though, for the start of training camp?
Sure.
Do we feel that way every first week of training camp, it feels like?
Sure.
Okay. But I mean, I have a similar feeling, but I also understand none of this is going to matter when the ball kicks off September 7th or whatever date it is against the Jets.
How much does training camp observations at all really matter at its core?
It's a good question. I'm a little biased to say it means maybe more than others would who aren't there.
What is the because look, you could if I sent you if you did not go to a single practice and I was able to keep you up front with injuries and all like that, but that's all the information that I gave you. So and so's healthy, so and so's not healthy, and I put you I stashed you away and you could not listen or talk about anything for the entire training camp. And then I came out and I said, the info that I gave you, what's your 53-man roster? You'd come pretty close to it, right?
Yeah, I think so, but that's a different question than what's the quality of the roster. There's a difference between
Right.
who makes it versus how good is the team and what's their prospects for the season looking like, and that's kind of how training camp is viewed, globally, nationally. Is how's the team looking is kind of a question of how good do you think they'll be this year. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% predictive power. It probably means a little more for the individuals. It probably means a little more for the new guys, the new faces you haven't seen in Pittsburgh before. How are they fitting? What's their role schematically? How are things changing, if any? So that's probably how I use training camp a little bit more than some of the old heads that are there. And health dictates a lot. One big thing of training camp is just get out of the summer healthy, not have a bunch of injuries to start your season with. So it's valuable, obviously, but I won't lie and say it's perfectly capable of predicting how a season goes. You've had great training camps and great summers where the team has had a bad regular season, 2023, a recent example of that, and I'm sure the inverse has been true. So it's always just interesting to me. They're all pieces of the puzzle, and that's just kind of how I use it. Is you take it for what it is. You talk about what's happening. You understand it's not all going to go as planned or as shown in the summer, and training camp is just that. But I think for the new guys, it means a little bit more.
All right, Alex, you put up a post on the site or within the last 12 hours. Training camp evaluations on 5 overlooked Steelers players. Don't give away everything because we want people to read it, but outline that for me.
Yeah, I just wanted something different that wasn't some of the normal headline names. And these are names we've talked about some. They're not going to be brand new to those who are diehards and listen to the podcast all the time. But JJ Galbraith, I think, has really got true practice squad material. A nice start to camp for him. The athlete I saw at South Dakota is the athlete I'm seeing in the NFL right now, which is encouraging. His catch radius, his hands, he's undersized. His blocking is going to be questionable. Can he truly beat out Connor Hayward for a spot on the 53? Special teams will matter so much, and Galbraith, I think, will get a chance there, but, we'll see what he does with it. But I just like Galbraith's overall makeup as an athletic tight end in a system that clearly likes to use the tight end, as Pittsburgh has collected Rock Taylor, the rookie UDFA receiver out of Memphis. Quiet start, but when he's made plays, whenever the ball has gone his way, it's been for some big gains. A big 50-yard hitter from Will Howard yesterday, getting wide open down the left sideline. He's got a couple back shoulder fades. He's had a couple downfield throws from Mason Rudolph. So just a guy that I think is kind of maximizing some of his targets. Max Sharping, who could be that number 9 offensive lineman, maybe still up in the air, obviously. And the tackles, I think, have played well. The backup tackles, Calvin Anderson, Dylan Cook, but Sharping, I like him at center. A veteran on the back end of that depth chart could be useful. So just getting a lot of playing time is Max Sharping. And then defensively, Akul Leota, an edge rusher. His path to the 53 essentially nil, but he's athletic off the edge. He's gotten consistent pressure, undersized, but a good speed rusher. He could make some plays in training camp. I like Julius Welshoff as well as run defense. I think it's been really solid since signing with Pittsburgh. And then a guy higher on the depth chart, going to make this team, Brandon Echols. I think they like Brandon Echols a lot. He's had a good training camp. He's gotten some first team reps occasionally as well. Replaced Darius Slay when Slay had a veteran day off. I think he's been really combative on the football. And the cornerback depth in Pittsburgh right now is really good. When you have your top 3 in Echols, in Trice, that is a heck of a group.
How do you feel about the tackle depth with just this, obviously not a lot of padded practices so far going into Friday Night Lights? How do you feel about Calvin Anderson and Dylan Cook right now, this moment, as you than you did before the start of training camp?
About the same, still pretty questionable on it. I think they both had good camps. I think Anderson's had some good reps. He's a veteran. He's, positioned to be your swing tackle and next man up. But I'm not going to pretend like if Calvin Anderson has to block one of these great pass rushers I talked about earlier, when you're facing Will McDonald or, who's over there in Minnesota right now? Is it Bullard or Grenard, whoever it is? Those types of guys. It's going to be an issue. So I still think offensive line depth is a big concern. It's something to watch, and we'll watch the group going forward. But it's a concern, and of course, your starting offensive line still has their own questions, especially with Broderick Jones having a tough start to camp and then getting hurt and missing some time. It's not feeling. We'll see. It's a long ways to go, but not feeling great about Jones' situation right now.
What is maybe the top two biggest things that you've actually learned since training camp got? I know you had expectations about this, but you still go into it with an open mind and all like that. But are there like two things that I don't know, eye opening, or that you've learned, or anything along those lines?
I like to wait for the learn finality of it, at least the sound of it, until camp is over, because they've only had one padded practice, which really is unusual to be this far into camp and only have that one. They'll have their second tonight. They'll have more by the weekend. Maybe I'll have a better answer, or at least more comfortable in that answer once we're through Sunday. I think defensively, how strong they look, the cornerback room, not that you were shocked by its play, but just top to bottom, how aggressive they've been on the football, how good that group can be. Maybe not learn, but solidify the thought this could be a really strong cornerback group that can take on and challenge the Bengals of the world with their receivers and the great receivers you're going to see routinely. You're facing Justin Jefferson. You're facing Garrett Wilson early this season. I think Pittsburgh can handle those guys. They're going to make plays, of course, but I think Pittsburgh has a good group ready to combat that and better than most. So that's one thing. The second thing to learn, I don't know if I'm there on a second thing yet. The rookie class has impressed me to start. I don't want to say that's a learned thing, but I've learned more acutely why Pittsburgh made those guys their 7 draft picks from top to bottom of why Pittsburgh had interest there, and that's kind of been shown throughout these first couple practices.
All right. This thing
What
went
have
a
you learned?
different direction.
What do you think you've learned just from your? I like hearing from your perspective, because obviously I wish you were there, but you're able to kind of capture a bit more broader viewpoint and kind of some of the narratives of what's being established and what's being said about the team, probably better than I can from my right there in the trenches viewpoint. So what do you think you've learned?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, I don't get to see every single play, and I do read all your notes and all like that, but there's nothing like seeing it with your own eyes. I can't help but get back to what I said, the multiplicity aspect of it. This team. And I've talked about this several times over the years as well too, about going back to the older New England Patriots and the mismatches. How this team is able, because look, you're only going to go into every Sunday with X amount of plays, right? Available to the team, and it's just all about putting the lipstick on the pig and the matchups, and then being able to check out of one play into another play. Or shift the formation. And Aaron Rodgers, and you would have thought that you would have saw maybe more of that last year with Russell Wilson, but you just didn't. And I think for Arthur Smith's offense to work exactly how he wants it to work this year, and with the personnel that he has, this offense has got to be able to have more checks against what they see. They've got to be able to collapse things down with their personnel against the lighter fronts, and they've got to be able to expand out against some of the heavier fronts to get those mismatches. They've got the players having the ability to do it and actually doing it are two different things, and that's what oftentimes is the difference between these good coordinators in the NFL paired up with good quarterbacks. They've got to be able to give Aaron Rodgers, the ability to have the autonomy to take advantage of what he sees and Zach Frazier sees across the line of scrimmage. I do think that even without having a Terry McLaurin in this offense, as long as they keep everybody healthy, and I mentioned this earlier, you've got the guys in Robert Woods, you got the guys in Roman Wilson that you would think that if you want to get physical and tight split those guys for a run play, you could do that. On the flip side, if you want to expand those guys out along with maybe a Pat Freiermuth or Jonnu Smith, you should be able to do that. How this team is able to execute multiplicity aspect of their personnel groups, I think is going to be key. And so far, I like it from what I'm hearing. And then the defense, once again, it is you're going to have the time of your life, I think, with charting this, because you chart the defense for the site of all the moving around that this team does. And I think obviously Jalen Ramsey is a big component of what this team wants to do on defense. And going back to what the Pat McAfee show and what TJ Watt had to say, the main takeaway from him is, look, there's going to be guys moving around a lot, and if this secondary can give us a half a second or another second more to get after the passer, that's going to mean the world to that front.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be really interesting offensively whenever they come out in 12 personnel or 13 personnel, how defenses respond. Are they going to be in base? Are they going to be in true nickel? Are they going to be in a big nickel? It's going to present a lot of challenges to defenses. How do you defend that? Because like you said, they can go in 12 and 13 personnel and keep things tight and run the ball. They can spread things out and go empty and force you to put linebackers out there in space to cover guys like Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth. So Pittsburgh has had issues with that in the past, and they've gotten better at it, thankfully. But I think that's going to be a unique challenge to how will teams defend those 13 and 12 personnel? So they go big, or they go small? That's going to create a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's one thing to shift and get into spread them out or collapse them down and all, but you've got to execute on top of it, right? You still got to make the play happen, and get yourself in the best position pre-snap is going to be key. And I think they've got the personnel and the quarterback to do it. So they've got, that's going to be one of the fun things to track over the first look. And I think you said it too. The first 4 weeks of the season is going to be a good litmus test because of the makeup of the oppositions being kind of more defensive minded more than anything. So even though it's quote unquote probably the easier part of the schedule, it's still going to be a challenge nonetheless for the offense to hit the ground running. And they can't afford to get off to a 2-2 or 1-3 start and all like that. Even if they just win in 6-3, they've got to win these ball games.
Yeah, agreed. And a tight AFC and a really difficult AFC North, even though you're not playing your divisional games that early, it's going to be really, really critical. But yeah, I think your point about Rodgers is correct. You have to execute, of course, but Rodgers will find the matchups. He knows where to go with the football. He knows which matchups to exploit. So you spread things out. You see how defenses respond. And Rodgers, I think, will have no issue trying to find the right matchup on a given play.
All
right, Dave. Where to from here? I think we kind of covered all the things I wanted to talk about. If there's
and
something
more.
else, and more, if there's something else to discuss, we can get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
Okay, and I don't think we have a lot of emails in here this time. Let's see, Brian. Let's see. Worst case scenario from James Susanelli. Great podcast, informational training camp reviews, also listening to official avenues of information. Your podcast is way better. All right, thanks for that, James.
Thank you, James.
What would need to happen to have Troy Falatano to move back to left tackle for this season? He says, I know I'm jumping to conclusion here. Broderick Jones being injured seriously. Broderick Jones just being disappointment level. Broderick Jones. If the later happens, would you really want Troy Falatano to stay at right tackle while we put in Cook, Anderson, or at left tackle? So I guess what would it take for Troy Falatano to have to move to left tackle this season?
I'm not sure. I don't know a scenario in which that's going to happen, at least not one that's realistic. I think they want to keep him at right tackle. They don't want to flip-flop him. Anderson's going to be your swing guy in all likelihood, unless somebody else from the outside gets added. And even though it's a Dylan Cook, he can play both tackle spots. I don't like playing musical chairs. I don't like creating two problems to solve one. I don't like moving my right tackle to left tackle, then having to fill right tackle too. If I can ever help it, I want to just have left tackle replace left tackle. So I don't know. I don't really see anything that could warrant that.
I mean, even what if Broderick Jones went down injured? Calvin Anderson, next man up, roll on?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously Jones is a big question mark, but even if he was really ineffective or got hurt, I think Anderson would just step in or some other tackle. I think Fautanu's not going to flip. I mean, you never know. Yeah, I don't know how a season can go, and I can't predict these things with a perfect crystal ball. But I just don't see the incentive or the team's desire to do that. Fautanu's not worked a left tackle at all. It's being drafted by Pittsburgh. He's been a right tackle. He's not even done the flip flopping thing. A kind of dabbling at both that Broderick Jones did. He's been a right tackle, and of course, was hurt a lot of last year. So I just don't see that happening.
Let's see. What was I going to add to that? Look, Broderick Jones, they're going to give him a long runway here.
In part because there aren't a lot of other great alternatives, but yeah, they need to see this through and see how he does. But but if he has a bad start to the season, we just talked about those defensive-minded teams he's going to see. How much runway is there going to be for a team that wants to win and needs to win now?
There's going to be at least through the middle part of the season runway with him. I'd get ready for it. You
Okay.
just hope that you don't get to that point, but they're going to give him a pretty long runway here.
I agree. The concern is not as much the runway, but what is just a long-term view. Are they going to have to go find a left tackle in next year's offseason and probably in that draft class?
Well, we'll have our answer after 2025 because they're going to have to make a decision on his fifth-year option and all.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be under contract for next year, but yeah, I think we'll know the future of Broderick Jones long-term after the season.
Right. Brian Tellini, the Steelers are in this unique situation where they're doing everything they can to win now without sacrificing for the future. While we might not agree with all the moves Khan has made, I think it's actually quite impressive how he has went about adding so much to this 2025 team without taking from 2026. He goes over the major additions combined with zero draft capital lost in 2026. You make the argument that every position group on the team has improved from 2024 except for one. He says offensive line. The team has spent back-to-back first rounders on a tackle, then drafted a center and a guard, blah, 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 has completely outside of that have completely ignored the position since. A team that watched Broderick Jones. So now we sit here watching to see if Broderick can flip the switch, if Fautanu is as advertised, and see a Sayamala battle an injury for a team that set themselves up so well to compete in 2025 without sacrificing the future. They sure seem to have collected a lot of nice cards to put in the garage, but forgot about buying the insurance policy. I get it, but see, you're trusting the fact though that you have spent all this draft. Them spending the draft capital that they have is the plan, and I suppose he's saying why didn't they go out there and spend money on or get a better depth guy there? Well, you try to do as much as you can, but can you really do it all realistically? And was there another guy that they could have got to come in here that not start, that take the peanuts, if you will? They are heavily invested in the trenches with draft picks, and at some point you've got to trust that you've made right decisions there. And yeah, I mean, if Alex and I have talked anything, it has been about the depth of this thing. But what could they have done different, Alex? As far as shoring up one more tackle, I guess. I mean, what would that have looked like?
Could they have drafted somebody? I think you could argue that on day 3. Not to say that was going to be the answer, but to have some more depth and competition and options for offensive line where talent can be scarce and depth can be tested. I think that's fair. What about sign a veteran? Didn't George Fant just sign somewhere? Or maybe he came in for a visit somewhere. I mean, there's been a couple backup tackles that have signed reasonable contracts.
I mean, obviously you didn't have a second round pick, so you couldn't go that way with it unless you traded, whatever. You had eyes on Caleb Johnson in the third. They deemed technically Sawyer best player available. I don't hate the pick. Who was on the board in the fourth round?
Oh, I'm not sure what tackles were there. I mean, I'm not saying anything in the early rounds, but Y.A. Black, Carson Bruner, Dante Kent. Could you sub an offensive tackle in there? I think he could. That'd be fine.
Is that a guy that could potentially have stepped in for this year?
Well, no, I think obviously be asking a lot, but I think the point is, can you just have good depth? Can you have options? Can you have competition? I think Pittsburgh, in some respects, have not always had great offensive line competition, and where some young guys weren't always pushed. Think back to Dan Moore kind of being handed a job, and he responded to it. He was a really hard worker, but Kendrick Green kind of, okay, we got Kendrick Green, and just hope Kendrick Green works. There's really no other option right now. It's kind of the situation Broderick Jones is in. We just talked about there's a long runway for him, which I agree, because there aren't a lot of alternatives to turn to if Broderick Jones does not work out. So it is kind of just, it's drafting these guys and really kind of hanging their hopes to these guys working out.
Look, and this has been kind of the narrative now for this off season here is the biggest questions about the offense is the offensive line, and the second part would be do they have a good enough number 2 wide receiver?
Yeah, no, I do want to push back in the comment, which I know is kind of made in jest about this team kind of forgot the engine in the car or whatever the phrase was, or the insurance for it. I think Omar Khan and Andy White has done a great job of investing in the trenches. That has been a clear trend of his 3 drafts. Offensive line in 2023 and 2024, a lot of high draft picks we did not see in the later years of Kevin Colbert. Defensive line, front 7 this season. So I think it's not been neglected. I think that'd be inaccurate to say, but could this team have used some extra depth at offensive line in this offseason? Yes, I think absolutely.
And look, it's not over yet either, too. We'll have to see what happens
Sure.
before the final roster is set there. Let's go. Let's see if I can find one more here. Where was I? Alex Highsmith. Paul Walters writes in, been listening for almost a year now, and I love the way you guys report and analyze in such great depth. Definitely makes work a lot more fun seeing hour-and-a-half long pods that never disappoint. Okay, well, we're about an hour and a half today, Paul. When you guys discuss the likelihood and possibility of the edge core remaining the same, at least for the 2026 season, it reminded me of a question that I wanted to ask. I think we can all agree that the 2025 Steelers season most likely ends with us picking 19 to 24-ish range. If that's the case, we will most likely need to trade up twice in the first in order to take a shot. Is there any chance that Highsmith becomes expendable due to our depth at the position and how valuable it is throughout the NFL? I could definitely see Omar valuing future first and or second round picks more just purely off the depth that we have at edge. What other players could you foresee being sent away in a trade in order to secure another quarterback dart throw? Oh boy. I mean, I get this. I get the premise of already worrying about the 2026 draft and all like that, and Alex Highsmith's name now coming up with guys like Herbig and Jack Sawyer and all like that. But we got to see how Highsmith plays first and foremost, and if he does take a dip down, what does that do for his trade compensation in that aspect? And how does Herbig play? How does Sawyer play? There's so many variables in it. Is there a chance that Highsmith could become expendable next offseason? I suppose that's plausible. You can't entirely rule that out, but how many times have you seen this team actually go out and spend the big money on a player only to trade them away, especially a homegrown one? It's not often you see that. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen with Omar and all. With all due respect, Paul, I think we're too far way out from getting a good handle on that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the hypothetical. You just have to see how the year goes, I guess. I still find that scenario unlikely. I'd also push back. I don't think Pittsburgh would have to trade up twice. I mean, you could make a big push to go up from, let's say, number 20 to number 8 or whatever. You don't have to make 2 trades necessarily to do that. It has happened before. Buffalo, when they moved up for Josh Allen, in a sense, moved up twice. Not in the same time frame. They traded up once, and they actually gave up a player, Glenn, one of their offensive tackles, who had gotten hurt on a big contract to the Bengals, and then moved up, I think, on draft day to get Josh Allen from they went from 20 to 13, and then 13 to 8 or whatever it was. So there is a little bit of precedent for that. I guess in that scenario, Highsmith would have to have an injured season. Herbert would have to ball out, and the team says, let's turn the page on Highsmith and use him as a trade asset. But Yeah, we're just too far away. Let's get a look at Jack Sawyer. Let's get more information on her big. And I still think Pittsburgh could make one big move to go up 12 spots in next year's draft for a quarterback.
All right, one more only because I think this guy's bumped this up a couple of times. Dean Develia. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. You should know I have problems with last names. Hi, guys. Last year, as Alex was wrapping up his training camp awards, I recall the discussion turning to possibly coming up with an official name or title to represent them. I'd like to throw a suggestion out here for your consideration. How about the Golden Nuggets? It's simple to the point and also embraces some nostalgic nuances. Golden, because they are the gold standard of long days and diligent observation on the part of Alex as he adds color and context to the start of Steelers football. Also, the color fittingly pays homage to the gold and the black and gold team colors. Nuggets, because as Alex often points out, they are his small and personal assessment of what he sees at camp. It's also a nod to the countless number of chicken nuggets Alex would eat at his favorite Golden Arches restaurant during those early trips to Latrobe. Maybe during the next couple of weeks, you could ask Terrible Podcast fans to submit their suggestions, and at the end of training camp, the winner would get a shout out as the awards are announced. Thanks for your insightful analysis and putting forth relevant discussions during a time of year when it's not so easy. Your love for what you do is genuinely reflected in your work, and the awesome quality is greatly appreciated and always entertaining. Thanks for that email, Dean. What do you think about Dean's suggestion of the training camp awards being called the Golden Nuggets?
Thank you, Dean, for the suggestion, all the kind words. We appreciate the support. I like that. I mean, it's better than what I've come up with so far, which has been not much. There's no good play on of my name that kind of fits and flows well, so probably getting off of that with some kind of new phrasing. Yeah, listeners, let us know what you think. I like Golden Nuggets.
Yeah, how about this year the first annual Alex Kozora Golden Nuggets awards from training camp. I like the sound of that. You could probably have some fun with that. Maybe the size of it, 14 karat, I don't know.
I'd play on nuggets, 4-piece, 6-piece, 10-piece,
there you
20-piece, something like that. I think is how I would do it. Yeah.
There you go. Tie into McDonald's. Maybe we get a McDonald's sponsorship out of this. I like it.
Or sued. One of the two. We're gonna get a sponsorship or a lawsuit.
Yeah, I like it, Dean. I like it, Dean. Thanks for keeping after it and bumping this back up here. All right, Alex. Long night ahead of us here. It's going to be an exciting night. This is one of the most fun practices of the year, right? For me as well too, because I get to watch what you do on Twitter, and I get to listen to the interviews on Sirius, and then we'll pass along those to the guys, and then should be a fun night there. So be careful on your trip out there, and hopefully it's a clear weather night as well too. So within all that, as always, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. We have an app and all like that, and we hope that you're tuning into SteelersDepot.com tonight. So until Saturday night, right? As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.